once again it's on. You know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome everyone to episode 54 of the Tristan on Sports Show. Toss it is. Your main man, T-Square, Tristan Thomas, your friendly neighborhood. Thank you all so very much for joining us on this special edition of Toss. I promised y'all this last week, and we're bringing it to you, and it's always hot, fresh, straight heat from the kitchen, as always. So why don't we go ahead and get this started? Very important topic. Very, very important in the sports world, and especially if you're a fan of Wisconsin sports and cover Wisconsin sports such as myself and this person I'm about to bring on really do. In the 5-year history of the Tristan on Sports Show, we have never, ever, ever had a guest, ever. It has only been one man, one mic, spread my voice to the entire world. And y'all all have rocked with it, and I thank y'all so very much. But sometimes you just need a heavy hitter. Sometimes you need that help to come in and really bounce ideas off of and really, I guess, work through the pain of being a Wisconsin sports fan with some of these teams and some of the things that have occurred with them. So I had to bring in our first guest ever in the 5-year history of this program. I had to bring in somebody who is a constant inspiration to me. One of the most passionate educators I know, if not the most passionate educator I know. He wants to see everybody win, but he wants to see change, and he is working to make that change. He is a part of the first media outlet that reached out to myself after winning Talking the Talk season 5. He's a champion of season 3 of Talking the Talk. This is the champions table, y'all. When I tell y'all this is gold standard sports talk y'all are about to get, best believe you're getting it from the best. We won championships. We know what we are talking about. Co-author of Superhero Educator, best-selling superhero educator. Everybody, my main man, Professor P, Eugene Pitchford. My man, welcome to Toss.
It's the ultimate honor, and with the introduction like that, you're far too kind. I feel the same way about you, and I'm honored. I'm honored to be the first guest, but it's just when we talk about sports, I'm always honored, whether it's the first time, the last time, in between. Like it's always an honor because your passion matches my passion. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of what you do. So any way I can help push your platform and push what you're doing or your ideals, and you know I'm always like a call or a text like away. So when you said there was a slot open, I'm like, okay, let's do it. I'm ready. No questions asked. So I'm hyped up. I'm ready. It's an honor and a pleasure. And you're the real star. So don't put it on me. You're the real superstar. So let's get to it.
And it's always appreciated, man. You're always there, and I could not think of anybody better. I didn't want anybody else to be the first guest here because you get, especially the subject that we're talking about here, you get the fact that we are truthful, opinionated, and passionate. You are all about it. That is what you do in your everyday life. And if you live it, you got to bring it, especially onto this program. So let's get to it, man. This special episode of Toss, I am going to title Milwaukee Bucks, What Happened? It was going to be What the Hell Happened? But, you know, I'm trying to bring it down just a tiny smidge. But we'll ask that question a little bit later. Before we get to that, we have to talk about the journey to the bubble. We have to talk about what happened at the end of last season to get to what happened at the end of this season. So let's go way back. Game 6, Eastern Conference Finals against the eventual NBA champion Toronto Raptors. Heading into that season, I don't think anybody thought that the Bucks would have the best record in the NBA. I don't think anybody knew that Giannis would take that next leap into MVP caliber, became the MVP of the NBA. But after that loss, where was your head at after that loss? And did it kind of temper expectations for you coming into the 2019-2020 season?
You know what? I'll start with the end. It didn't temper expectations. and I'm gonna go back. It was exactly what you just said. I don't think no one had the Bucks in last season or last season. I don't think no one had the Bucks going to the championship. But once we saw the talent and the chemistry, like, oh, there's something there. Oh, we can go deep.
Yeah.
Oh, we can actually win. We can actually win this thing. And I'm not gonna lie to you. As the season went on, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to the finals. And losing to Toronto, actually, it hurt me more than losing to Miami
Oh, speak on it.
because I was convinced we were going to the finals. That loss broke my heart, especially when we were up the way we were up. But you got to tip your hat to Toronto. You got to tip your hat to Kawhi. And, Toronto ended up going to win the championship and, injuries to Golden State, but from a Buck, in which aided Toronto. But man, oh man, that loss probably hurt me more than any other Bucks loss because it's unexpected and then it became expected.
Yeah.
It's a weird place to be in, but I thought that was ours. I thought, because in my mind, Tristan, I want to take you back a series before that. In my mind, if we could beat Boston, which had been like our Achilles heel,
Yeah.
if we could get Boston, we could get anybody else. And we gave it to Boston.
Gentleman sweep. Gentleman sweep.
Right? We gave it to Boston. So I'm like, okay, we knocked them off. Okay, Toronto got Kawhi, but in my mind at that time, Boston was better than Toronto.
Yeah, we all thought so. We all certainly thought so. And I thought that was really. Now, don't get me wrong. In the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, Toronto, because that had been the team that they couldn't quite get over the hump on. So you're like, okay.
That was another one. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, if you meet up with them, it's going to be a struggle. But you're right. What they did to Boston, like they lost game one, it's like, uh-oh. Because Boston had definitely been that team that they couldn't get over the hump on as well. But then when you go and give that team, a team like that, who made the Eastern Conference Finals this season, when you give them a gentleman's sweep, and they have been that bugaboo for you, that mountain that you couldn't quite climb, you're like, Toronto who? Like, we got this in the bag. Like, this is nothing. We can get Toronto. Like, don't get me wrong, it'll be a challenge because of the way they were playing defense, but we can get them.
Right, but let me add this too, Tristan. Like, a non-basketball thing was also happening, and in my lifetime, I saw something during that time period that I've never seen in my life, and you've talked about this, and I've talked about this many different ways. But the whole city was on lockdown supporting the Bucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll never forget, because like the first round, it was weird. Every time the Bucks played, it rained outside. So you didn't really get a chance to experience all the things around Fiserv Forum.
True.
But by the time we played Toronto, the city was on lock. And I remember being at the Fiserv Forum and looking out the window. And there was nowhere to where it wasn't dominated by people. It looked like ants. And everybody was going crazy and people were fired up. I mean, the Fiserv Forum was so doggone loud. People were hanging out in the streets. People were taking off work, getting off work at 12. And it was just an amazing thing to watch. And so, so outside of that, that's what probably it added to. Oh yeah, the Bucks is winning. The Bucks is going to win this because I want to see how the city was going to come out. Which is, like I said, the Bradley Center. We had our wins and our losses. I've never seen nothing like Milwaukee during the time of the Toronto series. It was just something that it was just insane.
I agree with that.
that added to why you got me standing up, man. I'm not even sitting down no more. I'm standing up. I'm standing up, pacing, thinking about this. It was just an amazing thing. I know people who just went downtown just to watch it on the screen. They had no intentions.
Yeah.
And I remember in my mind, the tickets were just about to go on sale for the finals. I started thinking, okay, which game do I want to go hang out?
Yeah.
I did have the pleasure and the opportunity to have access to tickets. So, okay, which game do I want to go to straight up, and which game do I want to be outside? And Tristan, I had penciled in my calendar.
Man.
Game 7 is the game I wanted to go to.
Oh, if it would have went 7, if they would have gotten there. And you're right about that, because, the Deer District, they've rebuilt, and for everybody who doesn't know Wisconsin, doesn't know Milwaukee and all that, there was so much undeveloped land around the area that they built Fiserv Forum. And they started rebuilding it, renamed it Deer District, putting in a lot of they're putting in a lot of lodging. They put in a lot of bars, restaurants, things to do in that area. And it's coming back alive. And to your point, I had never seen that area, not even back in the Big 3 era, with George Karl as coach and Ray Allen and Big Dog Glenn Robinson and Sam Cassell, not even in that run had I saw downtown Milwaukee be that lively, be that crazy. It was something really, truly special. Like, it, not that there wasn't a connection to that team, because to that point, for a lot of people, that had been the most successful team they'd seen in their entire life watching Bucks basketball. Fast forward to last season, that then became the most successful team that they had ever seen in their life. And you're adding another couple of generations to that added to that fervor, that added to that excitement. So I'm in full agreement with you. It was something different about the support the Milwaukee Bucks got from the state, from Milwaukee, from the state, from Bucks fans everywhere. But it all spilled out into the streets around Fiserv, in Fiserv. It was just a different energy about it.
And like I said, Tristan, I honestly thought we were going to the finals.
I did too. I did too.
I didn't care if we won or lost. I just wanted to be in the building, because that's something that hasn't going to the finals hasn't happened in your lifetime.
Nope.
It hasn't happened in my lifetime.
Nope.
And it's one of those things that if it happens, it may not never happen again. And
True.
I just wanted to experience it. So outside of everything we started talking about, it was just weird. Not weird. It was just unbelievable dynamics in the city that it was just like it just took everything over. Like, that's all people would talk about. So yeah, I was devastated by the Kawhi Leonard shot. Like, devastated. Although, and I know we're going to get to this point soon, we got to talk about what, like, being up on Toronto and then losing just games. Like, and that was the first time, quote unquote, people start building the wall on Giannis. And it was the first time we saw a little bit of frustration, and it was the first time it appeared that teams had figured Giannis out. Now, we do know it's debatable. Like, did they really build a wall? Can Giannis get through? Is it Giannis' fault? Is it their defense? Is it the coaching? Is it other players? Like, all that's debatable. But that was the first time, like, oh, wow. Like, outside of the Bucks losing, it was like, how we lost. And that was just an interesting thing to also watch, because that was the first time we had seen that happen also.
You know, I'll say about the wall, because we saw Boston build the wall against Giannis, and they did a great job of it in Game 1, and they won Game 1 at Fiserv.
Sure.
They did not sustain it. Toronto, on the other hand, sustained that wall, and it frustrated Giannis to the point where he's having these silly fouls and he's having these terrible shooting nights. the thing that did them in ultimately in that series against Toronto was the fact that their shooters could not make open shots. In the regular season, they averaged 35% on their three-point shots, open three-point shots. In that Eastern Conference Final Series against Toronto, 32%. You're talking about a difference of 3% being the difference between you going to the NBA Finals and probably winning it against a injured Golden State squad and losing, as you did, in 6 games to Toronto.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy how the margins are so slim, especially in the playoffs. So it didn't temper your expectations heading into 2020 at all. Like, you didn't say, oh man, if they losing like that, then can we really trust them the following year?
No, because I'm gonna tell you why. It didn't, because in my mind, the entire summer was, okay, well, Toronto lost Kawhi. There's no way another team would do this to the Bucks. So in that season, the prior, it went from not expecting it to expecting it. This season, if I'm being honest with you, I expected to go to the finals. There's no catching us off guard. There's no, oh, we have talent now. No, this season, I was pretty sure we were going to the finals. Pretty sure. Toronto lost Kawhi. I figured there may be some growing pains with the LA Lakers.
True.
The Clippers were stacked.
Yes.
The Clippers were stacked. In the back of my mind, I figured they would be a threat, but I didn't see anybody in the East giving the Bucks an issue. Nobody.
So you're looking at moves outside of the Bucks organization that really made you say, okay, Bucks got this. They got this. I don't want to quite say in the bag. I don't want to put those words in your mouth, but you're like, okay, we're expecting to go to the finals.
Because in my mind, so at the beginning of the season, I'm thinking Bucks and Philly. In my mind, I thought, okay, Joel Embiid and Simmons will figure this out. And they're young. They're going to run everybody.
Yeah, didn't we all think that?
Say it again?
I said, man, didn't we all think that?
Yeah, I thought that would happen. I thought Philly would overstep Boston. I thought Toronto would have the dip. And okay, so you're looking at AD going to the Lakers, Kawhi and Paul George going to the Clippers. Okay, so I'm like, there's really no super team forming in the East. This looks good for the Bucks.
Yeah.
Like, this is perfect for the Bucks. Like, when you just look at it that way, this is working out. In my mind, we had to get past Philly. If we get past Philly, we're good.
I'm kind of in that same thought process as you. I thought Toronto would have a dip, and they really stayed pretty consistent to where they were. I knew Boston would kind of be where they were. They could be very good. They could end up losing in a gentleman's sweep, like they did to the Bucks in that playoff. And you knew that out in Brooklyn with KD still not going to play because of that torn Achilles, it was just going to be Kyrie and they got some good players out there. But when you got KD next to Kyrie, I mean, that forms a different type of team. So it's like, okay, they're not going to be there this year. So I'm right there with you. I fully expected the Bucks to win the Eastern Conference, but I tempered my expectations because I'm like, look, if their shooters have another bad series, and it's not like it was abhorrently terrible. Again, you're talking about a 3% difference on their open baskets or their open shots from three. But if they have another series like that, they can get bounced. So in the back of my mind, that bit of PTSD was there. Like, okay, the shooters have to shoot and they have to make them. And you see the moves they made in the offseason, which is the next thing that we're going to get to. The signing of Wesley Matthews, more shooting. Re-signed Brook Lopez, more shooting. Re-signed George Hill, more shooting. They went and got Robin Lopez, who I know this franchise has coveted for a few seasons. Nearly pulled a not a sign and trade, but nearly pulled the trigger on a trade on him at the trading deadline a couple of seasons, especially when he was in Chicago. And then you sign Kyle Korver, one of the greatest three-point shooters in the NBA. So it felt like John Horst knew what this team was building to do. They knew that the wall was going to come for Giannis. They knew that Giannis would suck in all the defense, kick it out, and those guys who have proven to be great three-point shooters in this league were going to make higher than a 32% from three, especially when they're sitting there open. Did those signings have anything to do with your expectations for this season?
I mean, with everything you just said, that added to my hype. That added to the hypeness for me.
Overdrive.
Like, yeah, like we're gonna walk to the finals.
Walk. Wow.
Walk. Like I said, like there was nobody in the East I was worried about. And then once the season started, I don't know if we're getting this far yet, but you could tell Philly didn't have it, like right away. Just the chemistry was off. Ben Simmons didn't really seem to improve. I mean, I'm sure he improved, but his shot didn't improve, which made it difficult for Philly because they would just back up off of him. And B kept getting hurt. And so what I thought Philly would be, they wasn't. I'm like, oh God, this is like this is opening wide. This is wide open for Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And it was so good early on that we were able to rest our starters.
Oh. That's a whole fight.
I mean, just think about this. I mean, when Cleveland, when LeBron was in Cleveland at their best, at times they would blow people out so bad they could rest their starters. When LeBron was in Miami, they could rest their starters. Like, it's not like we're fighting to get into the playoffs or fighting for seeding purposes.
Yeah.
We were able to rest. Like, I'm telling you, Tristan, this just opened up amazing for the Bucks. Amazing. And maybe of my ignorance, I didn't take the other team seriously. Not one team in the East caught my attention. Not one. And with the signings that you said, and for many of these players, like another year in the system, Coach Bud, another year in the system. In my mind, I'm like, okay, Bud, like you had time now to figure out how to get through this wall. I'm thinking we good. I'm thinking we good. And obviously teams D up Giannis different in the regular season. I mean, there was nobody that just really put the clamps on Giannis.
Yeah, true.
I'm like, we're good. But the playoffs, look, I was ready for the playoffs January 1. Let's just fast forward to the playoffs. But obviously something happened before the playoffs, but like by January 1, I'm like, oh yeah. So now let me focus on the Western Conference. That's where I honestly put all my attention. Let these guys fight it out. Players get injuries. So by the time we meet them in the finals, it'd be a 5-1 series. That's what I thought would have happened.
And for the record, people, there's a big transaction that was made in that offseason, the sign and trade of Malcolm Brogdon. I'm going to go out on a limb and say those of us at the Champions table knew and are on the record as saying that the sign and trade of Brogdon was good for the team, and him being there or not being there had zero effect on the Bucks winning a championship. Am I right in saying that?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. Now, some may try to argue that if you had him over Bledsoe, but I think the way we lost in the playoffs, in our final round of playoffs, I don't think it would have mattered one way or the other. Me personally.
I'm right there with you. I said the entire time when You heard the swirlings of him not wanting to really be here. Him wanting to go elsewhere and get more opportunity. I'm like, well, let him go. I didn't feel that Malcolm Brogdon was a priority signing to stay in Milwaukee. I just, now don't get me wrong, he was a fantastic piece to what they did that season, before they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. He was a major cog in what they did, right? So, yeah, would you like it? But then you also have to look at the history. He had been injured. I mean, you just have to look at, okay, is he going to be injured down the line? Are you going to really sink that much money into a player that's really not going to be there? Oh, go and check Jabari Parker. Do you really want to invest that much cash into a piece that's really not going to be available for you when you can invest it in smaller pieces that are going to be available, are going to be consistent, and you could probably get the same performance out of those 3, maybe 4 players that you would out of this one who may not be there for you, and be just fine to build out an entire team as opposed to sinking an investment in that type of a guy.
Well, you also have to think about it, and this is not a bash towards Brogdon because he's a good player, right?
That's true.
Where during the regular season did you say, man, I miss Brogdon?
Can't think of one. Not one.
And so at times you could be really good, but the impact isn't felt one way or another. And that's no diss to Matthew Brogdon. It's just I never felt like we were missing something. Because at that point, we had George Hill, who was playing really well.
Yes.
We had Connaughton coming in, playing really well. So, and you can make the argument that, now I know the Pacers had injuries, but was Brogdon must-see TV at the Pacers? Or was he just and I say this loosely, a complimentary piece? And I like Brogdon.
Right. I don't think there's anybody that didn't like Brogdon. It's not like, and we're not sitting here talking about him like he's a trash player. He's not a trash player. Was he must-see TV for the Pacers? I would say when Oladipo was out, which is very interesting. Now the Bucks have their eyes on him. But when he was out, that means more opportunity, more shots, more minutes. Of course, his numbers are going to go up. He's a good player. He's going to go out there and get numbers anyway. But I think he's more of a complimentary piece, at least to this point, because we know some guys get it and the switch flips and then they become like a CJ McCollum, like a Chris Middleton who's in Milwaukee. The light goes on for them, they get it, and they become those all-star type level players. So, maybe he becomes that a couple years down the road. But if Oladipo is going to be gone, and now you're changing coaches, you've changed coaches. What does his role become? What kind of player does it become? I think the Bucks made the right call on signing and trading him and building out the team the way they did.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sometimes it's weird in life that you could lose something, but it doesn't affect you the way you thought it would.
Right.
It's just one of those things, man. It's really one of those things. Even with the Jabari, obviously that was an injury. Well, yeah, Jabari. I'm not even talking about Jabari. Let's just say, get back to Brogdon. Like, I think but here's the thing with Brogdon. I think at some point he will be that guy.
You certainly hope so.
He can't be that guy with Giannis. I think that was the issue.
He was not. Don't get me wrong. The way he kind of fit in with what they were doing was great. He was a guy who made clutch shots, who made clutch baskets, who made clutch passes, who made the good defensive play. He's a good defender. But I think Middleton's game complements Giannis a bit more than a Brogdon does. So I think we're all in agreement here on Toss at the Champions table that Brogdon was not the difference between a championship and not a championship. So I just want to dispel that for all the people who are still spouting that false fact out there. Stop it. Cease and desist immediately. You're making yourself sound stupid. Okay. You're making yourself sound awfully ignorant about NBA basketball. And we don't want that for you. We're trying to save you here at the Champions Table. So let's move on from that. And let's keep moving on throughout this story of the season here on Toss. We got Professor P with us. 52-8. That is what the Bucks got out to in the first 60 games. It was a 52-8 start. What do you think worked within that 52-8 start?
Shoot, man, just about everything. Chemistry, domination, offense, defense, rotation, health. Just, when you put, here's the thing, Tristan. In sports, there's this word called momentum. And you're either moving forward or backwards, right?
Very true.
And when you have good momentum one way or the other, it's hard to stop it. It really is hard to just reverse it. And it seemed like everything was working. Literally, everything was working. You throw in Robin Lopez, Brooks' brother. He's doing his thing. You throw in George Hill, he's doing his thing. Your bench is outscoring the other bench. In-game tactical decisions from Coach Bud and his coaching staff. It seemed like it was working. Giannis basically won his second MVP off the time period you're talking about.
Yeah. that's pretty much what they judged it on, yeah.
Right. Chris Middleton doing his thing. And so, it's hard to pinpoint on one thing, but that momentum, you had all the ingredients. And it's just hard to stop. And teams know what you're going to do, and they couldn't stop it. And we were this was a time where I think we dictated to other teams how the game was going to be played versus those teams dictating to us. And that's one thing Golden State was always good at. They're going to dictate how the game goes. Win or lose, you're playing their game. And I felt we had accomplished that.
That is the perfect comparison. That is exactly what I was thinking. You knew what was coming, right? You knew what was coming from Giannis. Giannis was going to come down. He's going to handle the ball. He's going to steamroll to the cup. He's going to finish in a variety of ways. And if you decided to try to put that wall up, he was going to kick it out to one of those number of shooters out there to get the job done. And when Giannis was on the bench, you're going to get a healthy dose of mid-range assassin Chris Middleton. And when you try to go and get in his face mid-range, he's going to kick it out. And those open shooters are going to hit the three. And on the defensive end, you weren't getting any easy baskets, if you were getting any baskets at all. You're talking about a team that was top 5 in both offense and defense. Let me repeat that for the people who are casuals and don't understand exactly how good the Bucks actually were. They were top 5 in both offense and defense. They were actually number 1 offensively. This was a good team on both sides of the court, both ends. They didn't just do it offensively. They also did it defensively. So you're right. It was a steamroll, and you knew, much like Golden State, and I think I've tweeted this out when I used to live tweet the games, the avalanche is coming. And that's the thing with Golden State. Golden State, you knew, okay, you might be able to play them. Go ahead.
The third quarter avalanche in Golden State.
Yes. The third quarter avalanche. You might be able to play them close for a quarter, maybe even a half. You're feeling yourself, oh man, we going toe to toe with them. We got maybe a single digit lead, and then they come out. They made the adjustments, and they absolutely kill you within the first few minutes of the second half in that third quarter. It was exactly the same thing with the Bucks. Oh man, we playing them close. We got them down. We got them on the ropes by a couple of points. Man, we feeling ourselves. We good, man. We walked up to a 5-serve and we putting it on it right now. And then the avalanche comes and you can't stop it. And by the time you look up, the clock has struck triple zeros, and you have just lost by 40. Go and ask Portland.
Yep. That pretty much sums it up. It was just beautiful basketball to watch, especially when it's a team you like, or if it's your home team, your hometown team, or your in-state team, or your favorite team. It was just a beautiful thing to watch. Like every game that came on, like, yeah, we got this. We got this.
Especially when it's a team that you support heavily and you watch heavily and have covered some of their events heavily. And they've gone through 30 plus years of mediocrity. And now they are not just a good team, not one of those, mid-level playoff teams that are going to win 50 games and they may make it to the second round. You're talking about a team that is in rarefied air, pushing for 70 wins and could win an NBA championship. I mean, when was the last time you could say you actually, literally, truly had that in the Milwaukee Bucks? I mean, it's been a super long time.
I totally agree. Totally agree, which makes, it makes this season also the end disappointing. But like I said, I was more disappointed the season before that. But now the expectation is there, like, oh yeah, we got this. Like, you know how people would say Golden State is bored with the season, or how people would say like LeBron is bored with the season.
Yeah.
They're just going through the motions. Let's just get to the playoffs. That's kind of how I approach this season. Let's just get to the playoffs.
Yeah, especially after that Eastern Conference Finals loss, everybody was like, okay, all right, this one hurts. It's painful. I think everybody turned off the NBA Finals. I honestly, I will readily admit I had a tough time watching the NBA Finals. I think the first 3 games of it, I maybe watched a quarter, but it was just too painful. You're thinking, okay, all right, they lost in 6, but they got there. They got to the Eastern Conference Finals. That was the knock on this team. Oh, they can't get out of the first round. Giannis can't get out the first round, and this, that, and the other. And they got out the first round. They made the conference finals. They lost in 6. They should have won. That Game 3 overtime game, just, oh, man, that was brutal. But they lost. But you have confidence that, okay, they can get there again. You're looking at the landscape, like you said. You're looking at the Western Conference and everything, all the talent that's transferring that way. You're looking at the Eastern Conference, and you're looking at the players that aren't going to be there, like a Kevin Durant, an off-injured Kyrie Irving. You're looking at the way the rest of the teams in the East are shaping up, and you didn't see any true viable threat, especially to the way the Bucks had played, and you had no reason to believe that they would play any less than what they had. So you come in with those expectations that they're going to steamroll their way through the conference and make the NBA Finals. So that 52-8 start was amazing. And then came a little bit of trouble. They go on a 3-game losing streak, a 3-game skid. Yep. Did you yourself see any kind of real trouble beyond this? Were you saying, okay, man, we're in the and at this point, and I want to make it clear, nobody knew about COVID. Nobody knew that COVID was going to make them pause the league, but we'll get to that. Did you see a little bit of trouble in the camp of the Milwaukee Bucks on this 3-game losing streak?
I did not see any trouble at all. Maybe I had my blinders on. I did not see any trouble at all. You know, every winning team potentially goes through a little rough patch. Potentially you could become disengaged. I know no athlete would probably say that, but I mean, maybe we were so good that we're thinking we're going to walk onto the court and then we're going to win because we walked onto the court. But to be honest with you, I did not see any trouble at all. Nothing caught my attention. No pause for concern. Zero. Because in my mind, we were going to the championship. So this is just part of it. I no worries, Tristan. Zero. I don't know if you had any, but I did not have one.
So I think your sentiments are much like other people out there where they're like, okay, all right, this is part of the season. You're not always going to be on. You're going to have, a little bit of adversity. So for me, I saw a difference in the way they play defense, but I did not think it would be something that was habitual beyond this 3 games. I did not expect that. I knew it was a 3-game losing streak. They were not playing the same type of defense. Even a couple of games before that, the defense had kind of dipped, and it was kind of unexplainable. They were still a good defensive team, but it wasn't to the level that they had been, that we'd been accustomed to seeing them over the last few seasons. I didn't have any reason for concern beyond that, but what did you see?
You know, Tristan, I look at it like this. It's hard to stay on all the time.
Yes.
Like, at some point throughout and you've seen this, and it's in all sports. At some point, you go through a game or two where you just don't have it for whatever reason, and you just throw that film away. You don't even look at it.
Yeah.
It happened. Move forward. And I that's really what I chalked it up to. Like, you know what? We just don't have it right this game, or, put those 3 games together. We just don't have it. Got to restart that fire. But it's hard to have it when you're not even thinking about beating I'm just making up something. You're not even thinking about beating the Chicago Bulls. Your mind is set on what's happening in the Western Conference. Your mind is set on L.A. Lakers, L.A. Clippers.
Bigger picture.
You might throw in Denver and that. Like, you're just trying to make sure that you're keeping pace with them, keeping an eye on them. Like, at some point, I think we started, not just the Bucks, many teams do it. You start sleepwalking.
True.
That's how I saw it.
Yeah, man.
So I was not concerned at all.
Yeah, and like I said, I think your sentiment is shared by a lot of people. It's one of the ebbs and flows of a long regular season. You're talking about 82 games, man. Like, you're right. It's hard to stay on for 82 games. It is an absolute grind. I liken this back to what we all saw during this crazy time that we're in on The Last Dance, where Michael Jordan talked about that grind, talked about the sacrifice and the price of winning and being on, and the mental grind. And part of the reason why he retired the first time, wasn't just because of his father being murdered. It was also because of the mental grind of, being Michael Jordan, being on the Bulls, being on this great team that they've now three-peated. It is a true grind to be on top of your game, to be that good, to have that championship mentality night in, night out, year in, year out, long playoff runs. It is an absolute grind. So you're absolutely right. It is one of those parts of the season where it's hard to be on every night. You're going to take a dip every once in a while, but then you got to snap back out of it, understand that bigger picture. You need to win these games to get yourself prepared for postseason. But
right. And we got to keep in mind, these teams get up now to play Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to make a statement on Giannis or to the first place team. So you may be going at half speed and they're going at full force. Now, what does that mean? Like, should we be going at full force? Well, absolutely. But there's is it more important to beat the Bulls, or is it more important to win the playoffs? So it gets tricky. And to be honest with you, we made different sport, but we saw this last week with the Packers. There's no way Tampa Bay is that much better than Green Bay.
No.
But we just didn't have it. Now, this is not taking anything away from what Tampa Bay did, because they balled out. But there's no way Tampa Bay is that much better than Green Bay. Now, I know that's not where we're going today, but I'm just giving you a different example.
No, and it's a perfect analogy, and you're going to get your behind kicked, and it goes back to your point that it's hard to be on every single game. Sometimes, and I don't even think this is one of those things where, okay, they're not on, it's a 3-game losing streak. Sometimes you just come across some matchups that are definitely difficult for you. I believe they played the Jazz in that 3-game losing streak. The Jazz are a very difficult matchup for them. They played the Nuggets, I believe, in that 3-game losing streak as well. And I could be wrong. Somebody's probably going to let me know. But I think they did. And that, too, was, they lost the home game. And I think that game might have been before the All-Star break, actually. So, but it likens back to my point that you come across some teams that are just a tough matchup for you that you just can't explain. For some reason, they're just the Heat themselves, and I know we'll get to them in a minute. The Heat was a nightmare matchup for the Milwaukee Bucks, and they played them a loss earlier in the season. It took a Herculean effort by them. But some matchups just don't jive with your personnel and the way you play basketball. And I think a part of that 3-game losing streak was that. But also, I just saw a dip in that defense, and I just could not explain why that was. So you have the 3-game losing streak. And
that's a good catch by you because I didn't see that. That's a good catch by you. I just charged it as, you know how people say in baseball, the dog days of baseball, that those July, early August games.
Yeah.
I just looked at it as the dog days for the Bucks.
Yeah, and you wish it was that because and like I said, nobody saw the problems defensively persist. But again, we'll travel on to that. So you got the 3-game losing streak, and then COVID hits the United States of America. COVID hits the world, but specifically, you talk about the United States of America right now, and people are being sent home to work, and now you're getting people who are catching this. And now you got people who are being killed by this. And we're not even going to go to the gross negligence by the people who are in leadership. Now it seeps into the NBA. And the first game postponed by all this was the Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder, where the 2 first players in the NBA were revealed, Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell, to have had contracted COVID-19. Now that it's hitting the NBA players, Adam Silver makes the decision to pause the season. We at that point, we didn't know that it was going to just be a pause on the season. What were your thoughts when you got the news that the NBA was pausing the season? And did you think that this was going to be a completely lost season by the Milwaukee Bucks?
Okay, so no, I didn't. And I didn't think it was going to be a completely lost season. So I'll share this fun fact. So I have a distinction that like many others won't have. I was actually in the Fiserv Forum that night, and it wasn't even a Bucks game. And I remember I was eating dinner, and my cousin was sitting next to me. And I don't know how his ESPN or Bleacher Report or some people use the score. I don't know how his updates got through quicker than mine, but he got an update that the Oklahoma City game got canceled. And it never said why. Well, initially, it didn't say why.
Yeah.
So I'm actually in the Fiserv Forum. I'm like, wow, now this is interesting. Like, because my first thought was, was it a terrorist event? Like,
right.
Did somebody run on the floor and, like, try to attack the players? Was it a bomb threat, a credible bomb threat, a gas leak? And then all of a sudden, you start hearing things about a player had come down with COVID-19. So at the time, for me, and this also coincided with what was happening in schools. So at the time, it slowly started to hit schools at the same time.
Yeah.
And people began to wonder, okay, like, school going to be on, school's going to be off. And in the NBA, my mind didn't think of a bubble. My mind went to having games with limited fans or no fans. That's what I thought what would happen. I knew once one player had it, other players would get it, but I didn't know. I think it was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was the next day that they put the season on pause. I don't think it was that night. I think it was literally the next day. And I'll tell you this. often people will say, do the outside run sports, do sports run the outside? I tell you this, once the NBA decided they weren't playing no games for a while, it definitely affected industries that had nothing to do with sports. So like once that, maybe because it was so public, but once that happened, you saw a huge shift everywhere else. And so like hats off to Adam Silver, because I'm sure they really didn't have a good understanding of COVID at the time, but it was the correct decision.
So they paused it that night. Any game that was that night. Any game that was in progress was going to be finished, and then there were going to be no games, and it was indefinite. So they made that announcement, and it spread like wildfire. I actually came to know about this cancellation from a reporter who was boots on the ground, and to say their night was one of a hellish feeling of, oh no, do I have this? They and just for people who don't know, it was a reporter that was boots on the ground in OKC. And those reporters have been around the Jazz. They have been around OKC players. And I don't believe any OKC players came down with COVID, just those two Utah Jazz players. None of the reporters were allowed to leave. They all had to be tested, but they all had to wait to be tested because they wanted to get all the players and coaches of the teams tested first. And then eventually they came around to go and start testing, reporters and telling them to go back to their rooms of quarantine. But they were essentially at the arena almost the entire night. Scared, did not know if they could go, like when would they be able to go home? Did they have this virus? Were they going to have to go to the hospital? Were they going to be put on ventilators? Because as you said, not just the NBA, but nobody really knew much about COVID-19 at that point. It's a novel virus. We're still learning about it to this day. But at that point, you're talking about very early on when this disease hit this country. Nobody really knew much about it. They just knew that it was lethal and highly, highly contagious. One of the most highly contagious viruses ever in life. So I came to know that from a reporter that was boots on the ground, and they flat out told me like, hey, I'm getting wind that the NBA season is going to be, they didn't say canceled, but they said it's going to be postponed indefinitely. We don't know if it's coming back. Right. And I'm like, no way. You got to keep in mind too, at that time, like literally was it right before or right after it? There were several states that were aggressive in putting limitations on gatherings. Yeah.
So an example would be like California. Only so many people could be in the building at one time, which would hurt financially. You could have had, let's just say they would say you could play, if their state said you could play but with no fans, well, they're going to lose money. And then if you had a game in Denver and their state or the city or the state didn't have those same exclusion process, they could actually play a game with fans. So I do know owners were upset at the potential imbalance of a financial structure. I do know those conversations took place. Because if it's no restrictions in Denver, but you're restricted in Oakland, owners are about making this money. So
oh, yeah.
That was also on the table, too. But once you saw the seriousness of COVID, you knew you couldn't even play in front of fans.
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that in there for a little bit. For the listeners out there to understand that piece.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, it's important to realize the conversations that were being had, because at that point they didn't know that the season was going to come back. Because exactly to your point, every state has a different protocol and procedure, checks and balances that they go through and who they leave those decisions with. Some will leave it with the health officials. In the state of Wisconsin, it's not even with the health officials. It's with the Republican-led Senate, state Senate, who makes those health decisions. And yeah, currently, as we speak, as we record this program, Wisconsin is a hotspot of all hotspots in the world for COVID-19 currently. We're here, I'm here in Tulsa Nation Studios. I'm talking, we're in a county that is top 5 for cases. I'm a stone's throw away from Brown County, which houses the Green Bay Packers in Ashwaubenon, Wisconsin, quote unquote. And they're talking, they're top 3. So, and you got a bunch of other counties and cities in the state of Wisconsin that are top 10. And it's just a scary time in the state right now. Again, I said I didn't want to go off into a tangent about lack of leadership as far as those cases go, but it proves the point. Every state has a different way that they go about making these health decisions. So you're going to have these unequal, unbalanced decisions where some teams may be able to play, whereas other teams may not be able to play. And it made it a little bit more difficult than what people might have thought about these owners getting together to make the decisions to play these games.
Tristan, let me add in too, just 10 seconds on this. For those that's listening in the state of Wisconsin or in India, because I know you're large in India.
We are.
But just those in Wisconsin, you need to brag on that too, by the way, the India part. But those that are in the state of Wisconsin, help us all out. Just wear the doggone mask. Just wear it. We want to enjoy these sporting events. We want to get back to live events. I don't care if you're for. I don't care what political party you belong to. I don't care if you think COVID is real or not. Just wear the doggone mask so we can get back to these games. And I know Tristan's show is on sports, but just do. I just have to say that to the people in Wisconsin because it's getting out of control here, and it shouldn't. So just wear your mask. Now I'm gonna give it back to Tristan for the sports.
A very important message from Professor P, and he speaks the truth. It is saving lives. You hear the numbers. If we don't wear masks, and we're talking everyone, right now in this country, it's only 49% of people consistently wearing their mask. If that number continues, you're going to lose over 200,000 more people. If you wear a mask, you could bring that down in half. Okay, this is a matter of life and death. Okay, you're talking about someone at this table, at the champions table that we're talking right here on Toss, and Professor P, who has had this and has survived, but still deals with problems from it. You're talking to someone in myself who has lost a childhood friend and just this week lost his aunt to this because people let their foot off the gas, decided that it was time to get back to quote unquote normalcy. And not only did they catch it, my aunt caught it, and she's the one that is now gone. So this is a serious deal. We need to all wear the mask. We need to care for each other, care about each other, give a damn about each other, wear the mask, practice social distancing, wash your hands. If we do this now, we can get back to all that quote unquote normalcy that you so desperately crave. But until you do the work, you can't reap that reward. The reward is saving lives.
And I know we're moving down the line on this Bucks thing, Tristan, but I'm going to give you the future. Here's where it's going to come back to bite Wisconsin sports fans. I truly believe we are going to get a game on Christmas.
Ooh, Hey.
It would just be a doggone shame if we can't get fans in there. Now, we didn't wait it all out. So as much as we want a championship, we want a game in Milwaukee on Christmas that don't start at noon or 11. We need that primetime slot.
They ain't gonna give you the primetime slot. That's always gonna go to a West Coast team. That's Lakers, Clippers territory.
Okay, well, we don't want the 11 o'clock slot.
Give us 3 p.m.
Give us 3 p.m. But here's the thing, Bucks fans. I'm pretty sure, and I don't have no inside knowledge or info, but it just seems right that we get a a Christmas Day game in Milwaukee, and there'll be no fans because we can't control the numbers. So I know Tristan's going to get us there, but I just want to wet everybody's whistle with that thought.
That's called a teaser in the business. A teaser by Professor P there, because we will get there because we're moving down the timeline. We're asking what happened with the Milwaukee Bucks this past season. So, COVID-19 prevalent, they begin discussions. How are we going to restart? It's impossible to restart in arenas for all those reasons that you listed and I listed about there being different rules in different states. And then it so happens that before the season started, and this is some real clairvoyant thinking, the NBA signed a partnership agreement with Walt Disney and their Wide World of Sports down in Orlando, Florida. It's a partnership, and they signed this well before the season began. It's a partnership, and, they're going to do business together and, this, that, and the other. Great partnership for them. They can't go to their normal arenas to go and play games because it's impossible because this disease is out of control, especially in different spots, especially in Florida itself. So we can't go to different arenas to play all these games. What can we do? And that's when Adam Silver and his team began thinking about a bubble environment. And what would a bubble look like? Who would we bring into it? We're so far into the season, and most teams have played 66 games. Most of them 65, some teams 66. I know the Bucks, I believe, had played 66 games before the shutdown. What were your thoughts when you heard potentially that a bubble environment was going to happen? Because I know we spoke about this a little bit on your I Got a Story to Tell podcast. But what were your thoughts about a bubble, and did you believe that it would work?
Oh boy. At that point, I was just happy to get the sport back. I'm still in the framework of let's clear out these few regular season games, go straight to the playoffs. We're going to win in the bubble. That's what I'm thinking at the time. I wasn't sure on if it could actually work because right before that time, you started getting more and more players catching COVID. So I really wasn't sure if the bubble would work or not because you still had employees of Disney who did not live in a bubble that had to work in the bubble. So I'm like, well, not sure if this is really going to work. But for me being a basketball fan, I was ecstatic because at that point, there were no sports on TV that I could remember. No. Because football didn't start.
Yeah, there was nothing.
Baseball was pushed back.
Yep.
Few rounds of golf. I didn't see any tennis. So, this was the first major sport back unless you're counting hockey. So I was pretty jacked up about it. But I questioned if it could work. And I think all of us had, little things in the back of our head. But at that point, I'm like, okay, let's go through this process and get to the championship. And that's literally the way I looked at it. I would have went back without the tune-up games. Once we got to the tune-up games, and I know you're getting there, once we got to the tune-up games, it started looking a little different for the Bucks. But to answer your question specifically, I was just happy to have the game back to us, watching it on TV. It was pretty cool, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, having games come on at 11:30 and 1:30 and 4:30 and 5, 6 games on a regular day. I thought that was pretty cool. So I enjoyed the concept. I really wasn't into the fake fan noise and all that, but overall I did enjoy the concept.
We have to give props to the WNBA because they actually started their bubble before the NBA, and they did a phenomenal job as well. And I gave them props on Toss a couple of weeks ago. They also 0 positives. They played their entire season, their entire playoffs, and their finals. No positives for not a single one, not even a false positive. So we definitely have to give them props as well, because I was excited for them to come back. Because at first we thought that season was going to be completely lost by them. And then they came back and said, hey, if the NBA could do a bubble, we could do a bubble too, and we could get our entire season in, as well as playoffs, as well as finals, and they did the damn thing. So we have to give them props too. But I'm like you, and I said it, and I'm on the record of saying it, and I am so glad that I am wrong. I have never been happier to be wrong about something in my entire life. No positives by anybody. And I thought for certain that somebody was going to catch it within that bubble environment, because this disease does not care where you are. But they did such a phenomenal job of who was going to be able to come in, how long they need to be under quarantine, the checks and balances of all of that. I mean, they had to kick players up out of the bubble because they decided they wanted some wing stop or, and other stuff, it was crazy, but they did what they had to do to keep everybody safe. So I was definitely excited. I'm so happy nobody caught it. But, you sit down and you think, man, that's months and months and months inside of a bubble. You're not going to be able to see your family. You're not going to be able to see your friends. You're not going to be able to go back home, sleep in your own bed. You're essentially on a 3 to 4 month road trip. And we know road trips are already difficult as is. Did you think about that part of it? And did you believe that the mental toll would play as big of a part as the physical toll of being off essentially an entire off season before you restarted the season?
I actually didn't, and I was wrong on that aspect. I'll admit to it. I didn't look at the mental aspect at all, and I think what skewed my mind after I caught COVID, it became my preference not to be around people, or to stay inside, or if I don't have to go outside, I don't.
Yeah.
And so for me, I became comfortable in that space. And it did not give me anxiety after COVID. These guys weren't operating in that space. They need to be out and about, social. With that much money, the world, you control the world. No, you don't control the world, but you appear to control the world. And so hearing Paul George and other players talk about the anxiety and the depression and just how it taxed you mentally, that was not on my radar at all. I looked at this as just a working vacation, warm weather for the people that weren't in warm weather areas. So I did not see the draining aspect of it. With and I know FaceTime wasn't FaceTime, Google Hangouts, or Microsoft Teams, whatever someone uses. I know it doesn't replicate like real life, real world outside of things. But these guys have so much access to technology, and I'm gonna be honest with you, Tristan. I didn't think about all that. I looked at it as, okay, this is a business trip, and let's get to the business. And it didn't really hit me until it came out that Paul George is struggling with depression.
Yeah.
And then the separate issue when the Milwaukee Bucks, I don't want to say instigated, but when the Milwaukee Bucks, that's a negative word, but when the Milwaukee Bucks led through social activism of not playing, those were the two times I'm like, man, I wish Paul George wasn't in the bubble, and I wish the Bucks weren't in the bubble. So those are the two times that it just jumped off the page like, wow, I wish they were outside the bubble.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to touch on that for a minute. People, it seemed like forever ago, but they don't understand. The NBA was paused already. It was paused in March, and we all saw the murder of George Floyd, which happened in May around Memorial Day. And during the playoffs, we saw Jacob Blake get shot 7 times in the back by a police officer unjustly. He's probably going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life. Even before the bubble became a real thing, George Hill had already come out in an interview and said that he didn't understand why they're going to play basketball. There's so much going on. And this was before Jacob Blake had been shot by police. He said, I don't understand why we're playing. There's so much going on in this world. we shouldn't even be playing basketball right now. We need to be focusing on this, on social justice and reforming racial relations and the reckoning on that. So I think he came in to the bubble with the mindset of, why are we here? We need to be doing something more important. And I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but it's interesting to put those two pieces. I guess what I'm saying is that I wasn't surprised by the Bucks boycotting. I believe it was game 5 against the Orlando Magic.
I was surprised. I was surprised, Tristan, because let's see here. Now I'm talking in my lifespan, like. So I can't talk about the 60s and, earlier than that.
Right.
But in my lifespan, the only other thing close to this unless I'm missing something, so I know you can clean this up if I'm off, was Donald Sterling.
Mm.
Where people just weren't going to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
They ended up playing, they turned their shirts inside out or what have you, but this is the only, and I'm sure I'm missing something, where I'm thinking, okay, so initially my first thought when I saw that was, okay, if I'm Orlando, I'm saying I'm playing to get the Bucks to forfeit. That was legit, and this is so ignorant of me, that's legit my first thought. If you're Orlando, you better say you're playing.
Yeah.
And
it's
getting me excited the wrong way, but it's a pretty powerful statement that guys were willing to not play, knowing it's going to offset things. Maybe for some people it's going to mess with their money.
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought the season was over in the bubble.
Yeah.
I thought it was over in the bubble.
I'm right there with you.
I expect to come back from it.
I thought for a second there that, okay, this might be the death nail, and not that it was a bad thing, because I was in full agreement with George Hill. I was like, I remember you told me again on your I Got a Story to Tell podcast, where you said that you were just totally, ever since COVID came down, and then George Floyd happened, you were kind of just completely despondent with sports. You just kind of completely turned your brain off from it, really wasn't focusing on it.
That's true.
And
That's true.
At that point of that boycott, I remember saying, like, yeah, even before that, I'm like, man, I love sports. It's my job to do this. It's the Tristan on Sports show. It's Toss Nation Sports Media. It is my job to do this. But even me, I'm like, okay, there's so much more going on. And I think people have seen a change in my social media where it's become more of my social justice commentary, where I would put, some out there, but I think it's been a lot more frequent. Your mind is just so focused on something that's much bigger than this game, because at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's a game. Yes, it feeds a lot of families. We're talking not just the players, but you talk about coaches and trainers and broadcasters and camera people and producers and everybody that it takes to put these games on. But it's so not important compared to what's going on out there. That is what's important. That's what's going to be lasting. And I think I felt that at that point, like, okay, if everybody gets on board with this, if all the teams and all the players that are in that bubble right now get on board with this, they can force this to stop.
And they wouldn't have been wrong. They wouldn't
Not at all.
have been wrong, because there's a term that's used out there that I think many many professional athletes have to deal with, and it's called survivor's guilt.
Mm.
They're looked at as the ones who made it, right?
Right.
And they're looked at it from the standpoint where they have all this money, everything works for them.
Right.
But trust me, they got family in these urban places. They got family members that's being affected by these things that they may not be affected by. But they're never that far most of them are never that far removed from the stuff. And where I thought you was going to go to right before this, outside of that, just no, I remember when I told you, like, man, I'm really not into these games. Like, man, I won't miss it if it. I mean, I would miss it, but I wouldn't. But I also, and I know you have too, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's important, people, for Tristan to understand, like, yes, we are sports fans, we love this, and you're one of the best of the best. But at the same time, you're doing this, you're also dealing with these racist sports fans.
Yes.
And oh, that sounds crazy. Like, we gonna root and holler for the win, but then you're trying, not you, Tristan, but then these folks are trying to tell when it is okay to protest, when it's not okay to protest. Suck it up. You got millions. I'm never going to the game again if you do this. And at some point, for me, it just became too much. To where, here, let's throw the sports to the side. Let me focus in front of me in real life. I'll get the sports when I get it. And I think I told you. When I want to know, at that point in time, when I want to know what's going on with sports, I look up your page. But there was a point I had to shut it off because the COVID unrest hit and the racial unrest hit. And for me, it was almost at the same time.
Yeah.
So I know that's not the Bucks, but I just want to just throw that piece out there, and I'll say it for you so you don't have to say it. There's some crazy fans out here. There's some crazy racist fans out here who think that they have the liberty to tell you what to think about sports and to tell athletes what to do. It don't work that way.
Not at all. Not at all. And you know what here.
I just had to say that right there.
And I'm glad you said it because it's an important part of this. You know, Toss is truthful, opinionated, and passionate, man. That's what we do here. It ain't just sports; it's also life, man, because we live it. You know, you talk about two black men here who live in this country who have dealt with themselves in the sports world, but much more than that in other arenas of life. You know, and there are a certain segment of people who only care for you to entertain them and shut up about everything else. And that's not the way it works. You know, I always say this to people like, okay, you think because these athletes, you know, let's say Anthony Davis making over 100 million, you know, and you think that man's bank account is long enough for him to not have to deal with the problems of being a black man in America, you'll be sadly mistaken. Those guys still get hate. Those guys still deal with problems of being black in America. It does not matter how much, it does not matter how long their bank account is. And I think that's a tough thing for many people to equate. They think money equals zero problems when, what did the song say? More money, more problems. It's the truth. So, you know, I wish more people would understand that and be empathetic to it. And then to try to tell people when and where to protest and then to be mad when they do so. You know, it's a whole other
conversation this week, Tristan. This guy was like, you know, the NBA is going to lose a lot of fans, and you know, for sports, it's our getaway. But the players don't have a chance to get away. And that's the part that people miss. This may be your escape from reality, and for me and for you, Tristan, it may be our escape from reality. But the players aren't obliged that same escape. So nobody cares if your feelings are hurt because there's a Black Lives Matter, the words are on the court, or on the back of the jerseys, Breonna Taylor, say her name or whatever. Like, no one cares if that makes you feel uncomfortable because these people out here feeling uncomfortable in real life also.
Every day. Every day.
Right. So, yeah. So I know we got to pivot from that, but I have to say that because it bothers me.
And the other thing, and I'll say is, well, they're mixing politics and sports. This is not politics, folks. This is human rights. Say it with me. Human rights, not politics. There is a big difference. And the fact that people don't know that makes them already look more ignorant than they're already acting. But as you said, we'll pivot from that. We could have a whole different conversation on that, but it was an important piece to touch on because it was very prevalent in the bubble and a part of why this bubble was able to even happen. The players weren't going to go for it if they weren't going to be allowed to bring about attention to Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and everyone else that has lost their lives because of the racial injustices in this country, in this world. You can't ignore what's going on worldwide. You have protests going on worldwide. You still have protests going on worldwide. And this is the NBA. It's one of the biggest sports in the world, one of the biggest leagues in the world. You have to do something about this pertinent issue. So the bubble comes to fruition. And you have the not even the reseeding, the seeding games where the Bucks only needed to win a couple of games. They did that, locked up the number 1 seed, the best record in the NBA, although it wouldn't be a full 82-game season. But who cares? You save the body, whatever. You move on to the playoffs. And you got the Orlando Magic, the classic 1-8 matchup. Nobody expects the 8 seed to do much of anything. The Magic had played the Bucks tough this season. I believe they did win a game against the Bucks in the regular season. What were your expectations for that series, and did the Bucks match or exceed those expectations within that series?
4-0 sweep was the expectation. 4-0 sweep.
I remember you said that.
When they lost, I think when they lost the first game, I'm like, okay, we'll win the next 4. Like I wasn't. Like, there was no way we were losing to Orlando, so I was good. Hindsight 2020, you could see we were good enough to beat Orlando, but we weren't quite the same team for whatever reason.
Did you begin to see those cracks in the armor?
Yeah, and let me say this too. I was telling someone right when the bubble opened back up, I said, man, I got a strange feeling that there's going to be a team that get up in there and make it to the finals like an average team. Now, I'm thinking I was going to come on the West Coast, like the Western Conference. I didn't think it was going to happen. And not to diminish Miami, to say that they're average, but if you looked at Miami pre-bubble, you could, when I say average, I'm talking about a 4 through 6 seed.
Right.
That was going to end up making it to the finals. I just didn't think it would come from the Eastern Conference. And so, in my mind, those average teams, the team that was in my head was the Indiana Pacers. That's a great example of an average team when I was explaining to people.
Wow.
Like, there's going to be a team that just runs the table. And it may not be your, quote-unquote, the big dogs, like the Clippers, the Lakers, Denver, or like Milwaukee, Boston. You know, there's going to be a team that slips through the cracks. I just didn't think it would be Miami. And I didn't think it would be in the Eastern Conference because the Bucks are so dominant. Like, the team that would slip through the cracks would have came through the Western Conference. So that's what I was thinking. But to go back to what you said, hindsight 2020, it did look like something was off, but we had more talent than Orlando, so I wasn't worried about it at that time for that series.
I'll say for myself that the bubble the seeding games did not really jive well with me because that fall in defensive play, and I think I'm being a little bit too harsh calling it a fall. Maybe we could call it a dip in defensive play continued. And when I'm looking at the seeding games, I'm like, okay, it's the seeding games. You got guys who are coming back to get back in shape. People forget Eric Bledsoe. You know, he caught COVID. He had to wait to come into the bubble. Did Connaughton catch COVID as well? I thought he did too. I think he had a delayed arrival to the bubble.
Yep.
I
thought it was Connaughton.
think it was Connaughton and I think it was Bledsoe. Or I might be wrong on Bledsoe, but I remember both those guys had a delayed arrival into the bubble. So you're like, okay, all right, maybe it's because, you know, they haven't played, you know, they essentially had a full off season off. You talk like it was 4 months between games. So
And that's tough.
it's extremely tough to kind of go off incomplete. You didn't finish the season to come back to playing 8 seeding games and to give yourself time to get revved up for the playoffs. It's extremely tough physically and mentally. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's due to that, but I don't know, because they came in on a 3-game losing streak, and for like maybe the last 5 games before these seeding games began, they weren't really looking good defensively, and now they're in the seeding games and they're not looking good defensively. This might be a problem. They go into the Orlando series, and honestly, those problems. I remember one game they played very well defensively where they just absolutely shut Orlando down. They couldn't do anything. But that entire series, they really did struggle on their rotations, and Orlando was hitting every 3 available. And the defense was reminding me of the Jason Kidd defense. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to say it. I'm on record of saying it. I think I tweeted it out during one of the playoff games. They're giving up way too many threes. It is reminding me of Jason Kidd's defense. It is, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is where we differ. It felt slightly awkward, but I wasn't thinking about anything else at that point. I was just ready for the next round,
which they did get to.
And I would assume that, okay, we got this out of our system. Now it's time to play big boy basketball.
Yeah.
That was my mind state at that time. Still thinking we're a lock to go to the finals. And you call me a homer, I'll be a homer, but I'm still thinking, like, yeah, we're going to the finals. In the bubble, and this was good basketball to watch in August, early September.
So they did win that series, and they move on to the second round. And I got to tell you, I said it earlier that Miami, for me, was that nightmare matchup. If the Bucks see them, I thought it was going to be a 7-game fight. I thought Miami was going to be the toughest team against the Bucks, but I also had confidence that the Bucks could beat them. It may go the distance. It may go 6 or 7 games, but I had full confidence that the Bucks could beat them. When you saw the fact that the Bucks advanced and their opponent would be Miami, and Miami was waiting on the Bucks, because remember, Miami swept their series. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that matchup?
I'm still drinking the Bucks juice.
Still on that Kool-Aid.
Yeah, I'm still on it. Bucks in 5, Bucks in 6. Giannis is better than Jimmy Butler. Middleton's better than Bam. Let's get to it.
You had no trepidation whatsoever.
No worries. Because now I'm looking at, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, because I think I'm looking at specifically Toronto and Boston. Because at this point now, Toronto's looking good.
Yeah.
Boston's looking good.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Miami's the weakest team left in the East.
And they just swept their playoff series.
Right. So I'm like, I'm thinking, Tristan, like, it's not going to be a difficult series. This should be easy work.
So you thought light work?
And I was wrong.
Man, we all were. This was so they get to that series, and I think everybody's expecting them to win. They knew. I think a majority of people knew, given how Miami had played Milwaukee in the regular season. And remember, they played each other in the seeding games in the bubble, and it took a 23-point comeback by the Bucks just for them to win that game. And, oh, by the way, Jimmy Butler didn't even play that game. So I think people were kind of worried about the Miami Heat being that matchup where, oh, here we go again. It's another Toronto, except this time it's in the second round. And those guys were balling, especially defensively. They were locking teams down. So we get to that series, and you see it being a little bit tougher than what we all thought. After the first couple of games, the Bucks found themselves down 2-0. Your thoughts?
when you're saying this, I'm sitting there thinking about maybe a potential leak between Toronto and Miami. Now, I could be wrong here. I've never thought about this, but something you said triggered this thought. Who led the Toronto wall? It wasn't Kawhi.
Nope.
It was Pascal Siakam.
Yep.
Who led the Miami wall? It wasn't Jimmy Butler.
Nope.
It was
Bam Adebayo. Yep.
So that tells me that a young defensive stalwart, not like so Boston was getting us with Aaron Baines, right? Giannis figured that out.
Yeah.
But a young stalwart in a wall environment gives Giannis or the Bucks trouble. Just when you said that like when you just said, I don't know why that kicked that thought in, but it just kicked that thought in. But Tristan, I'm not respecting Miami.
Still, even after they went up 2-0 that series, you like, okay, nope, still nothing.
Oh, I wasn't nothing. I'm thinking we got it. We got it.
You thought they were going to figure it out.
I didn't respect Miami. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't respect them.
So down 2-0. They play game 3. And if I recall correctly, and the crazy thing is the Bucks had a lead in game 1 and they blew it. They had a lead in game 3 and they blew it.
Yep.
At that point, down 3-0.
It was over.
You thought it was over?
Yep. Now, remember I told you about momentum?
Yes.
Sometimes, man, once that momentum is going, you can do the right thing, and it will not influence the outcome because the momentum is so strong. At that point, their confidence was so doggone high, and that wall was working so good, and Giannis gets hurt, that momentum is like, whoo, too little, too late, with good intentions.
I think for everybody that denied the importance or the relevance or even the existence of momentum, they go back and look at that series and they are going to get schooled and shown that it is a real thing. The momentum is definitely a real wave to ride. And I think the Heat did so because you're looking at a team that started the playoffs at 7-0. And you talk about they swept the Pacers up out of the playoffs. Then you go up against the number 1 seed, the team with the best record in the entire association, and you put those boys in the 0-3 hole. So now you move on to game 4. You're in survival mode at this point.
Let me say this to support what you just said. I've heard you say this before, like in March Madness. You only got to win a certain amount of games.
Yeah.
And if you get hot at the right time, that's how you get like these seeds 4 through 8 winning.
Yeah.
Because they're able to break it down to where we just need what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can tell me if I'm wrong. 5, 6 games in March Madness.
I think it's 6.
6. Like that's all you got to do. And like it don't matter your seed. If you catch this momentum, and because you've seen this before in all sports, sometimes you peak too early.
Yes. Absolutely. You can't peak too early.
Right. Just Miami is just perfect timing. It's like literally. I mean, I'm even wondering, conspiracy theory, did Miami have an advantage because they was in Florida? Like, I'm still trying to figure out what happened. Because to this day, Deontay Wilder, to this day, Miami's not better than Milwaukee.
That's
You like that one, don't you?
I did like that one. That was a good callback. I mean, you know, you would think Orlando would have the same advantage, but they clearly are in even the same class as Miami. But I mean, that's a well-coached team. Eric Spoelstra does not get the credit that he deserves. You're talking about a guy who was winning games before LeBron and Bosh got down there. He was winning games with Wade and other guys. And then he started winning big when those guys got down there. And then he stayed consistent, staying within the program, staying within himself. The Heat continued to stay with him. And now he's winning without those guys. It's not a fluke. This guy's a really good coach. He can coach up a defense. He could coach up the players and get the best out of them.
Look! If like they beat the Bucks and if they weren't playing the Lakers, I would have went for Miami. I would have went for Miami. And I know you're going to ask us at some point or speak on this at some point moving forward. I honestly think Miami should not chase a free agent. Like, I'm not sure. Like, sure, it'll increase their talent, but I think they have a good formula for success. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Miami or the Bucks made minimal changes. Now I know Miami fans and Bucks fans like, okay, they're gonna take this player off, add this player, but I honestly think Milwaukee and Miami could be very, very, very successful without major changes.
Ooh, and that's
that's coming up, but
yeah, that's a nice teaser because that's something we're gonna get to. So they're in the 0-3 hole. They're in Game 4. It's survival mode. Giannis had already rolled his ankle in Game 3. Comes in, rolls it again in Game 4. He's out.
But you got to say this though. Miami did an excellent job of making a wall.
Miami did do an excellent job of making that wall and sustaining that wall because I think that was the mistake of Boston last year. They came in Game 1, they had that wall, and Games 2 through 5, they did not sustain that wall. They did not sustain it, and the Bucks absolutely destroyed them and killed them for it.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind who led the wall in Miami. It was either Aaron Baines. I'm sorry, not Miami, Boston. It was either Aaron Baines or Al Horford. So after the first game, Giannis figured that one out real quick.
And the thing with me is that I don't even think it's so much about a part of it is like, okay, who's leading the wall? But the other part of it is the fact that they did have that wall, but their shooters were making their shots from Milwaukee. Their outside shooters were making those open outside shots, which is what they failed to do against Toronto's sustained wall. And they sustained that wall the entire series. They made life for Giannis miserable, but they were able to rotate fast enough to make those guys miss, or they just flat out missed open shots. Again, we gave that statistic earlier. You go from 35% in the regular season of open shots to 32% in that series, and that is the difference between you winning a championship potentially and losing, which you did.
Yep.
So you go into Game 4.
Totally agree.
And Giannis has already sprained his ankle in Game 3, sprains it again, rolls it again. Game 4, he's out. Now you got to go, okay, we got to go old school Bucks here. Before Giannis was Giannis, who did we rely on? Chris Middleton. And he goes off in that game.
Yep. That's such a hot button issue for Milwaukee. I mean, I know we've talked about it for years, literally years, and Chris Middleton came through.
He came through
what you would want your number 2 player to do.
Exactly.
So, no argument out of me for that game.
And they survived. It took overtime, but they survived it. They made the plays that they needed to make, and they survived it without their MVP. And they got it to a Game 5, and then in Game 5, you stood no chance. It was over at that point. Did you feel that way after Game 4? Like, okay, we got this game. We're not going to get swept. Did you leave Game 4 with any kind of hope that, okay, they could potentially get this to a Game 7, hopefully have Giannis back for that? Or did you say, all right, we got our game. We're not going to get swept. It's over.
Man, I probably felt both emotions, to be honest with you. Like on one end, like, we going to win this one, give Giannis another day off, come on back, and we're going to take care of business. But it's almost like the game, the Lakers closed out on Miami. At that point, I don't think Miami had much left in the tank. And I'm wondering how much we had left in the tank when Miami beat us.
Yeah.
You
It
see
was
it all the time. You fight, and then that game you just don't have it when you need it.
it was draining. I think game 4 was absolutely draining for those guys. And it's not because it went into overtime. I think that was just the cherry on top of it. I think the amount of energy it took to mentally as well to overcome, okay, we don't have our MVP. We don't have those, 30 points a game and 13 rebounds and multiple assists. We don't have that. We have to get over this mentally, and then physically we have to overcome this because it was a back and forth game. They were down, and then they came back, and they were down again, and then they came back. It was like Miami was answering everything they did, but then eventually they were able to overcome. I think because of that, they were absolutely spent when it got to game 5.
Hindsight 2020, Monday morning quarterback, it's easy for all of us to do, but is there another player on the Bucks team that you would have used differently in the closeout game?
Bud's rotations, Bud's rotations were extremely puzzling all postseason long. His lack of adjustments were just as puzzling. They were very much mirroring what they did the season prior when they lost to Toronto. There are guys that probably should have got more run than the ones that did. But man, it's Monday morning quarterback playing on that one. They could have done a lot of things differently, and they should have done a lot of things differently, personnel wise and play wise.
Yeah. Now, I'll say this. Once again, it does lower the sting a little bit seeing Miami make it to the finals.
A little bit.
It does. It lowers the sting because Miami balled out of control.
They did.
And sometimes you just have to tip your hat to the other team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want anybody thinking that we're saying, oh, well, the Bucks ran out. Well, you can clearly see it. They had spent themselves all in game 4 to not get swept and to get it to game 5. But those boys from Miami are tough. They play together. They play with each other, for each other. And they were wrecking shop. And it wasn't just on the Bucks. I mean, they were wrecking shop on everybody they faced until they went head up with those Lakers.
And in the first game, didn't the Lakers lose?
I don't recall. I think because it was still a little bit too painful for me that I don't even recall who won that game on the NBA Finals. I think.
But they were more competitive than anyone would have imagined.
Oh, yeah. And Jimmy Butler left it all out there. Let's be clear. Jimmy Butler left everything he had out there to try to win a championship. Jimmy Butler will not hang his head, should not hang his head at least, on that performance. He gave everything he had. You talk about somebody that ran out of steam. That team ran out of health. Goran Dragic was not healthy. Bam Adebayo was not healthy. Jimmy Butler's out there playing 47, almost 48 minutes of an NBA game, which is just crazy. But the Lakers are that good. We got to give them their props too. They came back to the bubble, refocused, resurged, and ball. I think they were the biggest beneficiary of that 4-month layoff than anybody.
But let me say this too about Miami. So you talked about the 3 games before the bubble for the Bucks and then what changed. But you can also have that conversation about Miami.
True.
At that point, Miami wasn't even starting Goran Dragic, which sounds crazy to say.
That's true.
They weren't even starting him.
Very true.
And what made their run even more amazing is that now he's starting because Kendrick Nunn had caught COVID before going into the bubble.
Yep. And it just fit.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda. Let Kendrick Nunn, almost call him Ward Dunn. Kendrick Nunn, let him start against the Bucks. We win the series. I'm convinced of that. You're not starting playing 2 rookies heavy minutes and beat the Bucks. He gets COVID. Bucks, Gorgon thrusted back into the lineup. I'm thinking they're trying to find a way to get rid of Goring. So, like, a lot of weird things fell into place, and we just never seemed to catch our traction in the bubble. And
Not at all.
You know, you could say it was this, it was that, but at the end of the day, we didn't catch our traction in the bubble. I will say this. Let that not be in the bubble, and we're playing in front of fans. There's no way Miami beat the Bucks. Impossible.
It's a part of that momentum.
I'll go down to the grave with that one.
It's a part of that. It's a part of that momentum you speak about. That the fans definitely add to that momentum. They bring about an energy that pulls something out of those athletes that they normally wouldn't get when they're on the road. And essentially, everybody was on a, like I said, a 3 to 4 month road trip. Essentially, is what it was. So no fans whatsoever. Virtual fans, yeah, you got pumped in crowd noise. It's just not the same. It got the job done. You know, everybody, I think for the most part, NBA consumers really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was very taxing on the players mentally and physically and, you know, and everything else. But, yeah, a crowd definitely brings out something about you that is just unmatched on the road or in a virtual environment. So
let me say this. Let me say this, Tristan. So in my mind, it would have played out like this. Bucks make it to the finals. Clippers in LA kill each other. One of those teams limp into the finals. Bucks beat that team. That's what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
But what messed us up was Miami winning, and then the Clippers getting beat.
They coughed that up.
They just kind of walked. Like the Lakers just kind of walked into it.
They coughed that up.
So it didn't really happen on either side the way I would have liked it. Because I'm telling you, Lakers-Clippers would have been probably the highest ratings the NBA would have had in a long time.
True. I think that was the matchup, the hallway series, quote unquote. That was the matchup I think everybody was waiting on, expecting to happen out of the Western Conference. It was a clash that everybody was just licking their chops for, man. They were sharpening the knives, getting ready to cut into that juicy Western Conference final steak, and it didn't get cooked because because the Clippers dropped the ball. They did not do their part. And it's like we said with last season. A lot of things fell into place that you felt, that we all felt, and I think Bucks fans and everybody who covers the Bucks everywhere felt that this was a championship that they let slip through those fingers, because you talk about a Warriors team that ended up getting really, really hurt. You talk about Klay Thompson going down and Kevin Durant going down. And it was as vulnerable as we had seen the Warriors in a long time. You talk about a team that made multiple finals and won multiple finals in this run. It was the most vulnerable we had seen them. And for the Bucks to be the best team in all of the NBA with the best record, everybody expected them to make that finals. They probably would have won that final series. You let that slip through your fingers, and I think the same thing happened this season, because the Warriors were definitely not the Warriors. Brooklyn, you didn't have to worry about them this season because KD was down. The Kyrie went out with that season-ending shoulder injury. Everything was falling into place for you to go and win that championship, and you didn't.
Yeah, that's why this one stings, because I'm looking. Okay, so when you said the Warriors just a few seconds ago, I'm like, okay, Klay and Steph will be back.
Yeah.
Draymond and Andrew Wiggins.
Yep.
And let's just say they take Wiseman. I don't know who their center is now, but Wiseman is better.
I mean, yeah, you're talking all that talent coming back and the number 2 pick. I mean, come on.
Right. Or it's LaMelo Ball, or you trade. I'm just making up something. You trade Andrew Wiggins, and you're going to get good value.
Yeah.
So they're sitting in a good spot.
Or you could even trade Wiggins and the 2 pick and get some serious value to kind of really rebuild yourself or keep yourself sustainable for many years to come. Because, I mean, you're talking like Steph is in his 30s now. Clay is approaching that. You know, I mean, you're not really going to be able to keep all these guys on the team because, I mean, Draymond's contract's coming up. I mean, he's an important cog to that team. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, you're not going to be able to pay. I mean, like I said, and that's if they decide to, let's say they just decide to trade the number 2 pick. Well, then you got Wiggins' contract on the books. I mean, he signed a fat contract extension before he was traded. They have to find a way to keep themselves sustainable because, you know, Clay and Steph aren't going to be there forever. You know, they got some good years left. Don't get me wrong, but they're not going to be there forever. So what do they do with that? But coming back next season, healthy with the number 2 pick in tow, I mean, the people are going to remember who the Warriors were. You talk about that avalanche, and we talked about that earlier. That avalanche is coming back.
Yeah. So that's why I think holistically this season, although the season before was more disappointing for me personally, this season I think everything opened up. Like it would never be, unless there's something I'm missing, it'll never be this open as it was this season. Because even in the East, you don't anticipate Boston getting weaker.
No.
If Toronto signs Van Fleet, Toronto's still going to be right there. And then you throw in Brooklyn, right? Brooklyn's going to be right there. And that's barring some unforeseen mega team that we don't know about, alliance. But you would have to assume that everything's going to be a little tighter. You have to assume some stars are going to go to the Lakers. You have assumed the Clippers are going to be good. Brooklyn is, I talked about Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to be tighter. Utah is going to be tighter. Then you got these upcoming young Memphis. Man, I really like watching Memphis.
Yes.
Let Memphis get a veteran or two.
That is a team that is on the cusp of great things. They really are.
I'm going to give you somebody who I don't really care for, but the shift of power. Just keep an eye on DeMar DeRozan and if he goes and where he lands.
Yeah, that's a name that I've been hearing kind of thrown around, that he's really not happy in San Antonio. He kind of wants to go elsewhere. That is a definite hired gun that can go somewhere and definitely shift the balance of power for a team and within a conference. I mean, it's not a true superstar shakeup anymore. Don't get me wrong, DeRozan is good, but I don't think he's superstar level like he was before. But if he comes to your team, he can still do a lot of great things and raise your team up a few levels, a few notches in your conference.
I started thinking, like, how would he fit on Milwaukee? And what would you have to give up to get him?
Too much. I think you would have to give up too much.
As much as you think. I bet you it's not as much as you think.
But what?
I'm not advocating like we give up. I don't know what you give up, but it's asking price. His trade value can't be that high.
You know, it's San Antonio. You know, it's they're gonna find some way to fleece some value up out of you. That's how they've been able to stay where they have been this long. You know, I think they just missed the playoffs for the first time in 20 plus years. You know, one of the longest streaks in NBA history. So, you know, they're hungry to kind of get back to where they were. So I think they're going to try to get as much value as they possibly can from DeMar DeRozan's trade value. A guy that Milwaukee does have their eye on, or at least they're in on, Victor Oladipo. I sit down and I think about it. It's like, would it be getting another Chris Middleton? Or is Oladipo a little bit more adept at getting and creating his shot? Is he the shot creator that Milwaukee is missing?
I got to go backwards a step before I even get to that question. Why does he want out of Indiana?
Too many.
I would need to figure that out first.
Too many changes. I think it's just far too many changes and a lot of pieces that just don't truly fit together. I think he was definitely hurt after they let go of Nate McMillan, because Nate McMillan had just signed a contract extension, and then 2 weeks later, he's fired after getting swept in the playoffs. Like, what sense does that make? So it's like, okay, if they're going to treat him like that, what are they going to do to me?
Happen anywhere. And that can happen anywhere, though. I mean, that's the business of the league. Um,
But it does affect players. It does affect players' mentality on that franchise. If they're saying, "Look, this coach has been here. He's coached us to." I mean, it's not like they were trash. And you talk about Nate McMillan, who led this Indiana Pacers team through some really tough injuries, including Oladipo being out recovering from his injury the year prior. So he's been there. He's very good with young talent, very good with young players, and he gets the best out of them. And for them to treat him like that does have an effect on players. And I don't think most people truly realize that. And I think that's a part of the reason why he wants out.
I would take DeMar DeRozan over him. Something tells me it's pause for concern for Victor Oladipo.
Now, give me the comparisons. Why DeRozan over Oladipo?
I think, and this goes into a conversation we had maybe a week ago, I think DeRozan will come in and play his game. I just see Victor Oladipo at this point settling. Because if he really wanted to be a star, he would stay in Indiana. It's a team that you could say they up and coming. Like they have good young pieces. Like he could lead that if he's into that. Like he's not a leader on the Bucks. Like,
But
he's not Giannis. He's not Middleton. Shoot. I mean, I like Brook Lopez. He's not Brook Lopez. Where do you see? I don't know where you see him fitting.
I don't think you necessarily need somebody to come in and be a leader. You have those on this team. You have a George Hill. You have a Giannis. You have a Chris Middleton. You have a Brook Lopez. You got enough guys, enough veterans on this team to be a leader. What you need is is results on the court. And I think everybody's in agreement. The Bucks need another guy that can really create shots, create for themselves, create for others, and take smart shots. That's something you're not necessarily getting out of Bledsoe, but it could be something you get out of DeRozan, and it could be something you get out of Oladipo because he has shown the propensity to be able to do that.
So there's a person at every position that fits exactly what you just said in good talent. What position do you want that person to play?
It's positionless basketball. So, I mean, does it really matter? We all know what the Bucks want to do. They want teams to pack the paint against Giannis so he can kick it out and hit those outside shots. Oladipo can hit that outside shot, but when things he could play there, yeah. You would have to shift some things on your team. Obviously, you would have to trade for him because he did sign, but so you would have to trade for him. So some of those guys that are there now are not going to be there if you go after him.
So it's either a point or a shooting guard because Giannis and Middleton got the fours locked up. And it's probably not a center. So you're looking at either adding a point or a shooting guard. And I know you're talking positionless, but the reality is you're looking at a one or a two.
I don't think necessarily. I honestly don't think necessarily that it's going to be a one or a two. If you're going to make a move, and the guys that we're talking about are not free agents, those are guys that sign contracts. They're on the team. You would have to trade for them. So again, the guys that we're talking about, some of those guys that are currently on the team won't be there if you do in fact decide to go and make a trade. So I think spots open up for those guys to be able to fit. But it's just it is, to your point, it is difficult because I think everybody does have this preconceived notion that it does have to be a one or a two, but especially a one because they're fed up with Eric Bledsoe.
So I'm just throwing this out there. No, I'm not throwing that out there because then he would take talent away. But if we sign someone in free agent, I don't know. It's just tricky, man. It's just tricky, and I think we got to talk about this for a minute. Like, a lot of the blame for the Bucks loss, outside of Giannis being hurt, and a lot of Miami being on a magical run. I mean, like we have these tough conversations. A lot of the talk, man, is at the 1 and 2 spot. And are we comfortable with the output that we're getting, or do we need more? Like, depending on who you talk to, there's different opinions, different value systems, or whatever. But do we need more to win that championship?
So
And
if everybody believes that the Bucks need a 1 or a 2, I'm going to hit you with the top 5 ranked free agents in 2020. Just the top 5, not even the whole list, just the top 5 ranked free agents. This comes from ESPN. Anthony Davis is number 1 because he's opting out of his contract, but he is expected to re-sign with the Los Angeles Lakers. He's a forward center. So, he's pretty much off the table. Not even on the table. Number 2, a guy you said is going to re-sign with the Raptors, but he is a free agent, Fred VanVleet. Now, I've heard his name about being re-signed back to the Raptors. I've also heard about the New York Knicks having a lot of interest in signing him, but that would be the only guard on this list. Let me hit you with 3 through 5. Christian Wood, a guy who was already on the Bucks, forward center.
I like Van Fleet, and I could totally see him in a Knicks uniform. Get that money.
Yeah.
And that would help us out by lowering Toronto. So I do like that move. And Christian Woods is the number 3.
He is the number 3 ranked free agent in 2020. If this gives you an idea of where this list is going. Number 4, Brandon Ingram.
He ain't going nowhere.
He's not going anywhere.
Restricted?
He is restricted.
Okay, so Christian Wood is unrestricted.
Unrestricted.
You know what? Come on back to Milwaukee. That would be a great move.
I never wanted to see him leave Milwaukee, honestly. I think his potential was so untapped. Yeah, and I saw him play with the Herd, and he was amazing. And I'm talking multiple games. He was just outstanding. And if he would ever get consistent run, which we've seen him get some run with the Pistons, I think he's a viable NBA player. But then number 5 on that list, Davis Bertans, the Wizard forward, only 28 years old, unrestricted free agent, but he's a forward. So that gives you an idea on how many guards and that was just the top 5. There's really not a whole lot out there unless you go and try to make a trade.
Well, then maybe everybody stands pat. And if everybody stands pat and there's no mega moves in free agents, like no earth-shattering things in free agency, and let's just say the trade world is just average, right?
Okay.
And the Bucks will be favored again.
Man. You go back and look at the and I posted this on the Toss Facebook page, the very early rankings of team power rankings, again, from ESPN, and the Bucks were listed as number 3 in the power rankings.
So who are the 2 teams in front of the Bucks?
The Lakers were number 1. I can't recall who was number 2, but it was not Miami. Miami, I believe, was number 9. The Warriors were number 6. The Nuggets were in the top 5, I believe. It was kind of an interesting list, but the Bucks were listed as number 3. So I think they are still held in very high regard despite of what happened with the bubble. And if they are to start playing in arenas again, whether it be with a limited number of fans or no fans at all, being on that home court, I think being in your home environment will do some good for these players. But you talk about all the travel. You talk about if and this is the big thing, they decided to put Christmas Day back on the table. Now, I know I told you, and everything that I had been told was, yes, Christmas was on the table, but then they thought it would be too rushed, so they decided to look at New Year's and maybe even a couple weeks after New Year's. But they decided to bring it back to the table, and I'll tell you why. Money. The Christmas Day is one of the biggest days, if not the biggest, for the NBA and their advertisers. They would be missing out on boatloads of money within a pandemic. that they need every penny they can get. So they are trying to force this season to get started on Christmas Day. Now, look at this timeline. You're talking about November 18th is the NBA draft. There's not even a date in which free agency will begin yet, but it has to start sometime after the draft. And then you're talking about starting the season a couple of days before Christmas, not even on Christmas Day, a couple of days before. You're talking about having brand new rookies try to come in and get acclimated, brand new players within free agency trying to get acclimated to new teams if they do so, move to a new team. And then restarting a season that ended 60 days ago. I think it's absolutely insane.
It's insane, but it'll probably happen. It'll probably happen. And let me just say this too. I don't know if you've seen this. It was an amazing end to the Tampa Bay Rays LA Dodgers game.
I did not see it. I did not see that.
Amazing. Like really amazing. Really, really amazing. Great. Tampa Bay won. Amazing.
Wow.
End, so
wow. Wow.
But I think Tristan, they're okay. I do think there's something else to other than money to why the NBA wants to start early. I think they're looking at how can we eventually get this schedule back to normal. At some point, you're going to have to start early because if they start late, there's no way you get an NBA team in the Olympics. Now, maybe that's a big thing, maybe that's not, but you can't go to the Olympics the week after the season. Like at some point, you gotta do something different.
Well, I mean, you have a lot of guys that go straight, like even played in the finals and then go straight to the Olympics after that. I don't know if that's really necessarily the reason, but and they're playing close. They're already proposing close as they can get to a full season. Right now, you're talking about 70 to 75 games. That's what's on the table currently, and they're keeping the play-in tournament format. So they have some things in tow that's trying to get them as close to a full schedule as possible. I mean, that's really close. You're talking 70 to 75 games. They play 82. It's not a ton of lost revenue, but that Christmas Day thing is what's really the stickler, and that's just what I'm being told. That Christmas Day, that money that they would be missing, because people forget they played the Christmas Day games last season. They played those games. They didn't shut down until March, so they had all that money from Christmas Day. And the Bucks had an embarrassing loss, but they avenged it in February, thank goodness. But they had all that money for those Christmas Day games. They would be missing out on a huge chunk of change that is so desperately needed, especially within a pandemic, if they are not playing on Christmas Day.
Agree with you, man. Agree with you. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think the Bucks are still looking extremely well in the East with the team as is, or if you make an argument that we add pieces. I think the Bucks. Like I can't see how anyone would be above the Bucks in the East.
Man, if anything, there would be some serious competition. KD and Kyrie, KD coming back healthy.
They don't have enough, not enough, and I think that's never going to work.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, you might be right, but it's untested waters, especially with Steve Nash coming on as head coach. He's never held a head coaching job before, but he has been in front offices. He has been an advisor. Bringing on, Stoudemire as one of his assistants. I mean, it's going to be interesting to watch what happens in Brooklyn. But when you have one of the best of the best, one of the best in the world in KD, if Kyrie can stay healthy, you still don't believe that has enough to work. You got Karis LeVert, you got Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, you got some guys out there that can really ball.
Oh, it's just not a good fit. It's not a good fit. Like when they catch a bad streak, I mean, Kyrie think he better than KD.
Oh man, I don't know. He You really believe that?
I don't see why he respects KD and not LeBron. And this is going to my fandom of LeBron, but like selfishly, I don't want to see Brooklyn do well, and nor do I think they'll do well. I'm not saying they're not gonna make the playoffs, but dude, there's no way they're better than Toronto, assuming Toronto has Van Fleet. There's no way they're better than Boston. So I look at them as how I look at Philadelphia. It's just dysfunctional. And
Yeah.
they signed Amari Stoudemire as assistant coach.
Yeah. Yeah, they did that. I think it's just going to be really interesting to watch. But we can have that whole conversation on another edition of the Champions Table here on Toss. But right now, we got to start to wrap things up. I want everybody to know where they can find Superhero Educator, where they can find I Got a Story to Tell podcast, where they can find the Superhero Educator podcast. I need you to give the good people of Toss Nation, both in India, the United States, all over the world, everywhere they can find you and so important content.
All right, so first off, thank you for having me on the show. Definitely appreciate it, and like I said, I'm your number one fan. So whether I'm on or not, I always listen and always learn. So I think that's most important. But you can find the book Superhero Educator on Amazon.com. Superhero Educator on Amazon.com. 15 strategies that will help you become the best educator possible. And I know many of you sports fans, you may not be in the education field, but you have family members that are. So push them to Superhero Educator on Amazon. Two podcasts that I want to get you guys up on is the Superhero Education podcast. I do that with another colleague of mine, and where we talk like this, but it's only on education stuff. So Superhero Education podcast. But what I really, really, really want you guys to focus on is I Got a Story to Tell podcast. And you can find that on Spotify, and you can find that also on Podbean. And you'll find Tristan there. We're talking sports, and you'll find other individuals. We're talking social justice. We're talking everything but sports. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you could check me out there. And last but not least, I want to encourage everyone to vote. And I want you to vote like your life is on the line. And I want you not only to vote, but I want you to find someone in your circle that does not plan on voting and make sure they vote. Make sure they vote. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I mean, I think it's obvious, but find someone in your circle that does not plan on voting and get them to vote. I voted today. We got out there, stood outside in the cold for like an hour, 30, 40 minutes. And but it felt good voting. So I want you to keep supporting Tristan, and I want you to vote. Those are all the things I got on my list.
Thank you so very much, Professor P, for coming on to the show, for being the first ever guest on Toss, the Tristan on Sports Show, expanded edition, basically home court sports. I'll say 2.5 because you got 2.0, 2.5 because we kicked it up a notch. So thank you so much for being with us, man, for doing this. I know it was a long conversation, but when we do it, we got to do it big. Hey, y'all know where you can find me on social media at the20double on both Instagram and Twitter. That's at the number 2, the number 0, and the word double. TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports is what you deserve. The Toss Facebook page, facebook.com/T on Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. We touch on a lot of things that we don't get a chance to cover on the show, and it's just all over the place, but very organized. Facebook.com/T on Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. This is T Squared, Tristan Thomas, reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week, so long from Toss.